Hi guys, so today we're going to be solving the standard equation of a parabola as well as their opening. Before we solve some problems, let's review on the different equation of the parabola starting with the general equation. So we have here two equations, the first one being ax squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. This is the general equation when the parabola is either opening upwards or downwards. The second equation here is cy squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. Now, this is the general equation when the parabola is either opening to the left or to the right. Now, to determine the specific opening of the parabola, we will just have to convert this general equation to its standard form. Now, once it is in its standard form, we will just use these equations to determine the opening. Let's now solve problem number 1. Determine the standard equation and the opening of the parabola y squared minus 2x plus 2y plus 5 equals 0. So for its solution, what we will do here guys is we will just transpose this negative 2x and positive 5 to the right side of the equation so that we can perform completing the squares to the terms y squared and 2y. So I will have here y squared plus 2y equals, we'll have positive 2x and negative 5 on the right side of the equation. And after this, we can now perform completing the square on the left side of the equation. So I would have here y squared plus 2y plus the constant equals 2x minus 5 plus the constant. Now to determine the constant, we just use the coefficient of the middle term, that is 2, divide it by 2, then square its answer. So that would be equal to 1. So I will place here 1 as well as 1 on this right side of the equation. Now the next step, let's convert this quadratic equation into its binomial form. So to do that, I will just take the square root of y squared, that is y, copy the sign of the middle term, get the square root of 1, that is 1, then place an exponent of 2. As for the right side of the equation, we can combine negative 5 and positive 1. So I will have here 2x minus 4. Now the last step here is we need to factor out the coefficient of x. So if I do that, I would have 2 times x minus 2. Then we will just copy the left side of the equation. So this is now our standard equation. Now, if you take a look at the standard equations here of the parabola, so it is similar to this equation here. So it means the opening of this parabola is to the right. Let's now proceed to the next problem. Okay, for this problem, we have here the general solution, 2y squared plus x plus 4y minus 8 equals 0. Now, the first step here is we would need to transpose the terms x and negative 8 to the right side of the equation, so that the left side of the equation will have 2y squared plus 4y, and the right side of the equation will have negative x plus 8. Okay? Now, before we perform completing the squares on this left side of the equation, we must factor out first the coefficient of y squared, since it is not equal to 1. So I will have here 2 times y squared plus 2y equals negative x plus 8. Then after that, now that we factor out the coefficient of y squared, we can now apply completing the square on y squared plus 2y. So I will have here 2 times y squared plus 2y plus the constant equals negative x plus 8 plus the constant. Okay? Now to determine the constant term, we take this coefficient of the middle term 2, divide it by 2, then square its answer. So that would be equal to 1. So I will place here 1, Now, for the right side, I will place here also 1, but I will have to multiply it by 2, since we have here 2 multiplied to this quadratic equation. So the next step here is we can now convert this one into its binomial form. So I will have here 2 times the square root of y squared, that is y. The sign of the middle term, then square root of 1, that is 1, then place an exponent of 2. As for the right side of the equation, I can simplify this term here, these terms here. So 8 plus 2, that would be positive 10. So I will have here negative x plus 10. Then the next step here is, since I have here a negative coefficient for the x, I will need to factor the negative 1 on the right side of the equation. So I will have here negative 1 multiplied by x minus 10. Then I will just copy the left side of the equation. So 2 times y plus 1 squared. Now the last step here is I need to remove this 2 on the left side of the equation. So I will need to multiply both sides by 1. And if I distribute it on both sides, these 2 here will cancel out, leaving me with y plus 1 squared on the left side of the equation. Now for the right side, I will have here negative 1 over 2, or 1 half, negative 1 half, multiplied by x minus 10. So this is now my standard equation. And by comparing this standard equation with the equations here, so it is similar to this last equation. So it means the opening of this parabola is to the left. Let's now proceed to problem number 3. So problem number 3, we have the equation x squared minus 2x minus 36y plus 28 equals 0. Now to start, okay, the terms that we will be transposing here is negative 36 and positive 28, so that we can perform completing the squares on x squared minus 2x. So I will have here on the right side positive 36y and negative 28. So on the left side, I can now perform completing the squares here. So I will have x squared minus 2x plus the constant equals 36y minus 28 plus the constant. Now to determine the constant, we take the coefficient of the middle term, negative 2, divide it by 2, then square its answer. So I will have here 1. So I will place here 1 and also 1 on this right side of the equation. Next step, we will have to convert this one into its binomial form, and that would be the square root of x squared, that is x, the sign of the middle term minus, then square root of 1 is 1, then place an exponent of 2. As of the right side, we can simplify this negative 28 plus 1. So I will have here 36y minus 27 on the right side of the equation. Now, the last step here is I will need to factor out the coefficient of y on the right side of the equation. So I will have here 36 multiplied by y. Now, as for the value here, we would have to think of a number that if we multiply to 36 would equal to negative 27. And that would be negative 3/4. Then I'll just copy the left side of the equation. So x minus 1 squared. So this is now our standard equation. So by comparing this answer with these equations here, okay, so the opening of this parabola is upwards. So this parabola is opening upwards. Now, let's proceed to the last problem. So the last problem here, we have the equation 2x squared plus 20x plus 40y plus 130 equals 0. Now, the terms that we will be transposing on the right side of the equation is these two terms here, 40y and 130. So I will have here 2x squared plus 20x on the left side. Then I will have negative 40y minus 130 on the right side. Now, before we perform completing the squares on the left side, I must factor out the coefficient of x squared since it is greater than 1. So I would have here 2 multiplied by x squared plus 10x. Then copy the right side of the equation. So negative 40y minus 130. Next, I can now perform completing the square on this quadratic equation. So I would have here 2 multiplied by x squared plus 10x plus the constant equals negative 40y minus 130 plus the constant. To determine the constant, let's take the coefficient of the middle term, that is 10, divide it by 2, then square its answer. So I will have here 5 squared, and that would be 25. So I will place here 25. Now on the right side, I will place here 25, then multiplied by 2, since I have here 2 factored out. And the next step here is I can now convert this quadratic equation on the left side into its binomial form. So I will take the square root of x squared, that is x, the side of the middle term plus, then square root of 25, that would be 5. Then place an exponent of 2. As for the right side, I would copy negative 40y. Then for this one, negative 130 plus 25 times 2, that would be negative 30 plus 50, that would be negative 80. Okay, so the last step here, or the second to the last step here, is I would need to factor out the coefficient of y on the right side. So if I factor out 40 or negative 40, I would have y then plus 2, since negative 40 times 2 would result to negative 80. Then for the left side, I will just copy it. So I will have 2 times x plus 5 squared. Now the last step here, we will have to remove this 2 on the left side. So I will have to multiply both sides by 1/2 so that I can cancel out this 2. So on the left side, I would have x plus 5 squared. Then on the right side, I will have negative 40 over 2 multiplied by y plus 2. Simplifying this value, the standard equation is x plus 5 squared equals negative 40 over 2 is negative 20 multiplied by y plus 2. So this is now our standard equation. And by comparing the standard equation to one of these equations here, we can say that the opening of the parabola is downwards.